And Jesus, as I said, is the only one to do it. Don't tell me about the pagan and Greek mythology. I've had it with that. At first, I heard that it's been done before, this resurrection thing, but I studied it. I analyzed it. I went in depth more and realized, no, I'm not buying it. The first account of somebody in mythology dying and coming back to life was in 150 AD. That's after Jesus. So who copied who? Yeah, that's the question. Copying. Like in 8th grade, a teacher knows somebody in her class of 20, 25, 30 kids, somebody's going to be cheating. Somebody's going to be trying to copy. The odds are that 1, 2, maybe 3. So she's got to be watching and looking for cheaters and copiers. Remember taking those tests, and some days you were totally clueless, or should I speak for myself? And the idea was to sit next to a brainiac. Oh, yeah. And you kind of look over at his or her paper, and most of the time, the brainiac, who now runs the country, but the brainiac covers up, doesn't want you to copy, and I don't blame him. I blamed him then, but I don't blame him now. And he covers up, and he turns in his shoulders to block his paper. He keeps turning in his shoulders more and more. You might as well put a big bucket over him. You can't see him or the paper. So you might as well give up on the copying and just do your studying beforehand. Now, this story about dying and coming back to life, there was one story before Jesus, kind of. There was this god, this pagan god named Osiris. Is that his name? And I guess he was all chopped up. Maybe they put him in a blender or something. I don't know. But he was all chopped up. And this goddess Isis came around and put him back together again. Like Humpty Dumpty. Yeah, like Humpty. And he came back, but he dwelled in the underworld. He didn't come back to life per se, just in the underworld. But that was a myth, part of mythology. To me, it's all nonsense. And you know, even if there are similarities between something that occurred and the death and resurrection of Jesus, or similarities to any event of significance, so what? So what? What does that mean? Years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a big bodybuilding champion. And I was similar to him in that we were both men. But that's where it ends. I was nowhere near his physical stature. Was I? No, that wasn't. But I wasn't. So there was a huge difference, even though there was some similarities. You get it? You get what I'm saying? Now, these gods of mythology, there's no evidence that they ever existed in any capacity. It's all made up. That's what a myth is. It's not real. It's fake, correct? There's plenty of evidence that Jesus walked this planet and that he was born, lived, and died. Plenty of evidence from the Bible, of course, from other Christian writings, but also secular writings. People that don't believe in God, that are non-Christian, over 2,000 years ago. You got the Greek and the Roman scholars and historians of the times. They were people like that back then. Scholars, historians, all over the place. And they wrote down what they saw. And they believed in Jesus, that he lived. It's recorded. They didn't believe he was the Messiah or the God necessarily, but they believed in him, and they wrote down his current events of the time. Life and death recorded. Not a myth. Not a myth like a mermaid. Board guy, just so I'm correct, mermaids are a myth, right? They're not real? I would like them to be real. Yes, I would. I wish they were. I was always attracted to mermaids. Yes? No? Who wasn't? Mermaids, they're so colorful and bright and smooth with the long body tail of theirs and the fins and the whole thing. I wish mermaids were real, but they're not. They're a myth. Myths aren't real. Now, the book says that there was darkness and an earthquake when Jesus died on the cross. For instance, the historians of the time, they recorded that event. Now, the book says darkness came over the whole land until mid-afternoon with an eclipse of the sun. The Romans recorded that event. That's a beautiful situation there. And some of their accounts attempt to explain it away, that it had nothing to do with Jesus dying. It was because of this, that, and the other thing. But for me, these events of Jesus recorded by secular sources like the Romans and the Greeks, that validates the event for me. It verifies that it actually happened. And I choose to believe the Bible's interpretation of those events, not the CNN of the time. Not what the Romans and Greeks necessarily said why these events occurred, miracles and so forth, from Jesus. The CNN of the day. They can spin it any way they want. According to them, there was an eclipse of the sun of sorts, and it was dark when Jesus was on the cross and died. But you know what that was? That was a huge bear walking along the top of a hill, and it just blocked the sun from coming down on Calvary. That's what it was, some big bear. CNN. I can imagine when they do their interviews for their newscasters, here's how they do it. As an example, they show them or explain to them, here's the situation. Trump just gave a lollipop to a kid and gave $100 to his parent. Now, it's up to you to make that situation diabolical. Go ahead. In 2 minutes, do it. Come on. This is like a casting director's office, casting for a part, and CNN casts for their newscasters, and that's what they kind of do. So the Roman records verified that Jesus absolutely existed and verified his behavior throughout his life. And if they're going to twist it and turn it in order to maintain their power and control, the Romans and Greeks historians of the time, and Pharisees and Jewish writers and whoever back then so be it. But it occurred, and it's a beautiful thing. So let's not make any mistake about it. Jesus did rise. He did. Accept it. He rose, and he rose on Sunday. And that's crucial. The resurrection, that makes or breaks Christianity. If he didn't rise, this party's over. Throw your book away, man. But he did rise. And not according to the Pharisees, though. Not according to them. They knew that Jesus predicted that he was going to die and that he was going to rise on the third day. And the Pharisees, since they didn't believe he was the Son of God, they killed him. They were behind Jesus dying, a big part of it. So the Pharisees to Pilate, after Jesus died, they said, we have recalled that imposter, while he was alive, made the claim, after 3 days I will rise. So the Pharisee says, hey, this guy Jesus will not rise from the dead. Oh, no, you don't. He is not going to rise. Like Ralph Cramden. Didn't he say that? Oh, no, you don't. So the Pharisees made sure that there were guards at the tomb to squash this prediction, to make it just a meaningless myth. So the guards were out there, and I love the guards, the Roman guards. I like their costumes. the armor. The helmets are cool, but I rather prefer them to have that big fuzzy hat, like the Royal English Guards, that big fuzzy top hat. That they wear. I wish the Romans had that, and then the outfit would be complete. The Royal English Guards, protecting the Queen as they stand there. Those guys over there in England, they stand so rigid and solemn. They don't move. And what happens if you have an itch or a little mosquito on your cheek? They're like robots. They don't move, but they wear those big, beautiful black fuzzy hats. And they're awesome. I don't really see them except for the Liberty High School band. I love them. And also the guards at the castle from The Wizard of Oz. Remember that? When they were marching outside the castle and then the Scarecrow and the gang were trying to infiltrate. But the guards, with those hats, you got to love it. We got a caller. Who's this?
Hey, good morning, Robert.
Stu, what's happening?
Tyler and Troy Sliv.
Yes.
Magnolias come from the tomb. She says they're empty.
Amen.
Look up Ron Wyatt, archaeologist. He's gone to Israel. He's been there. He's seen the places hands-on. He's seen it, smelled it, tasted it, explored it, investigated it. Ron Wyatt, and he has actually taken blood and sent it to a science lab. It was Israeli, Jewish, and they have no horse in the game, and he doesn't either. And it came back where a chromosome was missing, and they asked him where he got this blood from. And if anybody knows the story of the crucifixion, there was an earthquake, and on top of Golgotha is where those crosses were. And it split that area from that earthquake, and that blood dripped down into a tomb. Just look it up, people, for yourself. Ron Wyatt, and also look up the Shroud of Turin, because they can't explain how that was created even today.
Where did you learn so much about archaeology? Because we're definitely going to do a show on that, and we need you to give us the facts and figures and help us along. But how do you know so much about that?
Well, you get to a point where you go to church and you hear about the Bible, but then you start to explore on your own. And I belong to the Biblical Archaeological Society, bar, which anybody can belong to. And once you start to go to these places, like Rudy talks about, once you start to go and see, and you come out of the churches and you start to explore on your own, that's the difference between just taking something from the church. In the Hebrew language, you could have one letter out of order, and it would change the whole phrase. So remember, when you were talking about our medias today and all the hogwash and all the lies that they use, the scribes back then, all they'd have to do is inadvertently change one letter.
I agree. One letter makes a difference. Let me ask you something quick about the Red Sea. I mean, that's been an issue where all the chariots and horses and soldiers and so forth died chasing Moses and the gang. Have they found, and if not, why didn't they find the chariot wheels and the chariots themselves at the bottom of the Red Sea?
They have. Ron Wyatt explored that within 2 hours, scuba diving, and I used to scuba dive. He actually found with his son's chariots, horses' hoofs, it's there. A lot of this stuff is there. There's different countries and different factions. They suppress the artifacts because they don't want truth being known.
I believe that. Hey, I want to thank you for your call, and as I said, keep your ears open for that archaeology show coming up in the next couple weeks.
Play this. Have your board man play this song.
Oh, now you're getting cocky. He played you a song last time, and now you think you have carte blanche.
That was beautiful. Have him play from a distance.
All right, we'll think about it. He'll think about it. All right, thank you, Stu. Hey, and as we know, the guards at the cave, at the tomb, they were no match. The Bible says, suddenly there was a mighty earthquake as the angel of the Lord descended from heaven. He came to the stone, rolled it back, and sat on it. The guards grew paralyzed with fear of him and fell down like dead men. The guards, I mean, they're not going to be any opposition or hindrance to God's plan. And that goes for us too. Jesus had a plan and he fulfilled it. We have plans made by God for our own lives, every one of us. And our ineptitude will not ruin that special divine plan sketched out for us by God. And like the guards, I mean, they just dropped like flies, like enemies of Captain Kirk. You know, Captain Kirk putting the phaser on stun. They just dropped like their bones evaporated. They just collapsed like rag dolls.